became clear that we needed a definition of what success was actually look like. And then as we would begin to formulate that, then we started to understand how interconnected everybody was, and how that your success was limited to what the performance of other people were doing.
I'm excited to introduce to you my latest podcast, Run It Like You Own It. In this podcast, we're going to explain how you can use the science of human behavior to gamify the workplace.
The Run It Like You Own It podcast with Wouter.
I think where we should start is how we know each other.
Yeah.
And I was looking back through our files this morning to try and figure out when we first started working together. Do you remember our first project or your first project?
Yes. So first one was in Red Deer.
Yeah.
With Sanjel. Was there in 2013 or 2012, I think it was, or
Yeah.
2012. And I went down after my training. I went down to meet with you down in, where was it? In Texas down there.
Maybe it was San Antonio.
Yeah, San Antonio down there. And then I remember we drove halfway across Texas because when I landed, they just had the massive bus accident, right? And so Bill and you guys, they had just had that massive tragedy happen. So I landed and they were like, Derek, it just happened this morning. I was in shock. And it was just like,
That's right. That was the West Texas one.
yeah. And then we drove all the way across Texas. I didn't know it was that big. And we never met each other. And so I ended up, you and I just spent 12 hours in a truck.
The first time you met him.
Well, very.
It's like, welcome to your new boss. Spend 12 hours in a car with him.
Yeah.
But I remember
That's crazy.
I remember on the way back, I'll never forget it. We were driving along and you're like, hey, Derek, take a look. And way off in the tundra, there's this little restaurant coming up on the side of the road. And we're driving and we're getting closer and closer. And he goes, hey, Derek, take a look at the sign. And it goes, guns and what was it?
Liquor.
Oh, guns and liquor.
Liquor.
And you're like, what could go wrong?
What could possibly?
Yeah.
Like,
I remember that sign. I always laugh when I saw it.
yeah, so it was kind of so it was kind of like one of those first times that I was there. But yeah, and then I came up and started the project in Red Deer, then Medicine Hat, then up to Grand Prairie, and moved around a bit.
Yeah. Well, you did the Lindbergh project as well.
Yeah,
that one as well. And what about you, Steve? When did we get together?
So that, Derek, you're talking about what year was that? 20?
I think it was 2012 or 2013. To be right at the beginning there. I think 2013.
So it was like 4 years before that? Was it?
Oh,
maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the first one was that huge fracking project in Horn River.
That's
where I
right.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So way
it was. Yeah, every all over from there, right? Yeah. Went up Fort Nelson. First couple times we drove in.
Yeah.
And that was 2010. 2010. Because Nessman and I made the terrible journey into Fort Nelson to watch the Flyers in the Stanley Cup final. And Patrick Kane scored that bizarre goal that just destroyed me. Nessman.
I'm glad you got over it. I'm glad that you're over it.
So I remember Nessman and I sitting there like, what just happened? And I said, like, no, I totally hate being here. I don't like Boston pizza anymore. I don't like Fort Nelson. It was tragic. Yeah, but 2010, I remember because that was weird. I remember more because of the playoff situation. So that's going back a ways, right? Yeah, 15 years ago.
So 15 years later, or 13 years later, in and out of projects, we've done in and out of projects. You're now the VP of JPS, and you're working with Derek. So you've continued to work together on and off through these years. And your goal has been, or I understand you've been applying some of the tools that you learned with Forefront of gamifying the workplace to JPS and applying it there. How's that working out? What are you doing? What worked? What didn't work?
Yeah, well, so when I first arrived, um, I could tell that they were a really progressive company and they had some really good foundations from the owner of the company in terms of the culture and such, but they were missing a lot of the run it like you own it kind of pieces where people were, strategically engaged in how they were doing their jobs and how they were involved in the progress and the performance. They would take care of their tasks, but nothing was very individualized. Nothing was unified and understood across the whole company and stuff. So that became part of the endeavor, which was to make sure that they had an understanding of where the business was. They had an understanding on how they could impact it, those kinds of things. So it became a big journey of trying to get an understanding around that and how everybody could get involved with that. So that was kind of where it was when I first started there, and I could see all the opportunities that were available in the business and in the industry that were pretty untapped in a blue collar kind of tradesman like business. So that's kind of where it all started.
So what did you see? Like what was untapped then? Because I presume JPS was like its competitors at the time
Mhm.
with kind of the standard expectations of everyone.
Yeah. So what was I noticing?
Yeah, what did you?
I just noticed
Because
that,
because you were fairly new to the industry, right?
yeah, I'd only been in the industry about 2.5 years.
Right.
And so I kind of knew what was going on. But when I came to JPS, they had a real lack of performance in their service department, which is the first thing they really wanted me to come in and support and help. But then it quickly became evident across all the departments that everybody was just kind of in there doing their job to the best of their ability, and they were it was a pretty good culture. Everybody was kind of friendly and stuff, but I would say it was, as I said, it would be everybody had their own idea of what success looked like. And so everybody was kind of going this way or that way, and there was not a lot of an alignment to know if they were winning or not winning. And it became clear that we needed a definition of what success was actually look like. And then as we would begin to formulate that, then we started to understand how interconnected everybody was and how that your success was limited to what the performance of other people were doing. So then it means that we all have to kind of get aligned so that everybody's success is like congruent and flowing all the way from basically to the first marketing to then somebody picking up the phone to call us to then assigning somebody to go to do the job, then how they perform that job, then how we closed out the job, how we maybe packed the job, ordered the parts for a job. Like none of it was really clearly organized or defined. And so it just became a process to do that because I think that's pretty consistent in most of the industry where they just kind of have a reactionary process to a need and then they go after
So where'd you start? How'd you start this whole thing?
it. I hired Steve.
So Steve, how'd you where'd you start? How'd you start this whole thing?
Well, I think Derek had definitely had a big impact by the time I was a part of it. And so, yeah, Derek contacted me and said that, his role had been shifting and he was taking on more responsibilities and different responsibilities at JPS. So I remember the conversation where Derek said, there's a couple years work. Are you up for this? I'm going to be an older guy, right? So I, uh, I thought there's no way, that seems like a lot. And, and, showed up and I did my thing for a while and then said, there is a lot of work to do. But at the same time, too, I think it's important to recognize here that, when I showed up, like, it's a good, solid business with really great people in it. At the same time, too, it's exciting because there's so much opportunity and so many things to do. So I've been fortunate because Derek's, focusing on his piece of it, and I have my piece and team that I work with, and I think I'm trying to continue a lot like the comment Derek made about people working, kind of on their own And they were very effective, but not as effective as possible, though, because we are learning more and more about how the workload, the sharing piece of it and the growth that can come from that. So I'm really focusing hard on that right now. That's a big piece of the business. And, understanding what are the right measures and applying them. What's really exciting, though, is that the leadership there is grabbing hold of this, and they're leaning in hard and doing a great job. So I feel progress is amazing. Um, it is more than a couple years' work,
Yeah.
and but we're in a good place.
So often I get asked, we talk about gamifying the workplace,
Mm.
and people always often accuse us of using just platitudes. Well, that'd be cool if you gamified it, but what does that actually mean? So maybe talk a little bit about some of the specifics that you started using and the kind of what it grew into
Mhm.
that got people to shift their thinking a little bit about the way they looked at work, and then that changed into change of behaviors in the way they executed
Yeah.
their work.
Well, the first thing that kind of had to happen is they kind of like they were highly invested. They were good people and they were highly invested and they cared a lot about how things were going. But I don't know if they understood the full impact of what they could have. So you start creating that environment of everything that they're doing has an impact positively or negatively, and they start getting excited about how they get a voice, how they start to get a voice to know that they have contribution to this, the results that we're going to be producing. And so when they realize that we're listening to what they say or what they believe or their expertise in these areas, and then we start measuring what they're doing, they start understanding how they can start making a big impact on this, and they get very engaged or more so engaged than they were before, where they don't feel like they can impact things. And so that's kind of the beginning point where it's like you start to realize that they have impact. Like if you want to talk about gamifying it, they have some controls now, right? Like they have some levers that they can pull and push and stuff. And then you start measuring it so that they can see the impact of what each one of those is doing. It gets them excited and it gets their creative juices going. They get involved because they want to win. They want to be successful. So they all of a sudden start saying, coming up with ideas like, well, we could do this or we could do that. That's when they're starting to like act like they own it. And they start all of a sudden start like getting highly invested. Now you need leadership to guide that so it doesn't the train doesn't go off the tracks. But that was just kind of how it was, very subtle implementations, because there's sometimes high resistance to the change, but it's only because they think it's negative to themselves. Once the change is all of a sudden positive to their quality of performance or their quality of enjoyment, or it's smoothing out issues and problems and they're seeing progress, they get pretty excited about that, and that train starts to move a lot faster. And then, we use that term of discretionary effort in the industry and in behavioral science, but that's going on automatically. It just starts to come out like a video game. You try and win, and then all of a sudden you don't, you died, but it's okay. Let's try again. And it's just, it gets that going. It's truly the same exact thing. You're putting in the same parameters around it. And so it can sound simple, but it's nuanced by the people that you have, and it's nuanced by the leadership that you bring to it. But it's truly wired into the nature of us to do these things. And so it just becomes fun once you know how that works. And Steve's like really great at that.
The it's actually, it can be a lot of fun, and there's sort of I think I could give examples that are maybe like big scale or small scale, but it all matters, right? And we have I think like what might seem like a small scale thing, but there's an impact here. Is I think about our there's a young gentleman who's our dispatcher. His name is Jack, and I think for the he's was in the trucking industry, and this becomes somewhat new to him, but he's good at his job. And I think it takes a while for him in that role to really understand how much impact he has, and what he really is controlling when you start to think about revenues and the other factors, right? And I could see his growth was coming good. And then I said, like, this year, there's a little flip thing that four numbers on it, right? So I set it at 2025 on January 1. I said, Jack, how about every time at the, the next morning, you just flip it to remove however many duct cleaning jobs we did. And so then it was like, well, is our goal 0? I said, no, it's maybe 0 in August. Then we'll start adding and going the other way. Like, just have fun with it that way. But I really appreciate it because now every morning, like, Jack beats me to work. But when I get there, I walk in and I look at where we are. And Jack even makes it more fun. He's proud of it. He can't wait for me to see it. And he comes up with 3 or 4 facts, historical facts of what happened in that particular year. So I'm starting to learn what happened in like 1902, 1888 and all. And it's enjoyable, right? Like that's kind of fun with the data, right? And then I think maybe, you start to look at a bigger scale where, Derek had a vision for a kind of a perfect installation, because in our business, I don't know if anything can be more important about putting the equipment in precisely right. It's going to perform better, the efficiencies, the noise, all of that. I could go on forever about it, but sort of at first, the measures start to be around the quality of the actual workmanship. But we started to understand quickly how much more there is to it. So you start to measure the safety aspect, the home, the cleanliness and the neatness of the whole job. Is the vehicle inspections. It can encompass so much, and so we start to see it as a little bit more across the business or holistic, rather than just the particular work that's done in somebody's basement. And it turns out that the installation, the people that do the installs, the gentlemen doing those jobs, they like this, and they know that they're getting better, not just at their craft, but the whole business piece of it.
The problem we were coming up with when it came to perfect installations was that some of our team could do 15, 18 perfect ones, and then they might make a mistake or two. And then that was the only time they would really get feedback from us, which was like, hey, you missed this. And their back would be up, because it was like, after 15 or 18 perfect ones, now I'm hearing from you. And they're kind of like, that doesn't feel very good.
Mhm.
So what we realized was we started to have to track all of them, because that way they were getting really great feedback and they cared about their quality of their job, and they started getting all of the good feedback. But so after you're done telling them good job for 15 or 18, when one of them might be bad, they were totally receptive to listening and talking about it or telling us what happened.
Mhm.
Because it wasn't like we were now coming at them critically, like, what's wrong with this? They were like, well, I know they know I do good work because they just told me 15 or 18 times. So now we can actually talk about what could be done or what could be better or what could be improved, because they were comfortable. And so when you don't give any of that feedback for years or for weeks or for months, and then you want to try to improve something, their receptivity is super low, because they don't even know how much you care about them. They just feel like you're criticizing them again. So that became one of the major reasons why we needed to even measure that, just so they could be recognized properly for all the good they were doing. And then when it was time to actually make progress and advancement, the walls were down and they were receptive to what we were talking about.
To take it to an obscene level, or an absurd level rather, is in the previous world, if I wanted your attention, all I had to do was screw up a job and I'd get it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
otherwise, how else?
Wouldn't hear from you. Wouldn't hear anything about it. So it became
So how do you, like, but that's, if you have a whole bunch of crews out there and they're all doing perfect installations, how do you provide that feedback to them? And that's a lot of work.
Yeah. So there's, the teams, they get together at least weekly, and we have, a great guy that visits the job sites, and I know that he's working at that hard, at that communication piece. He's there to be sure that the quality is there and that the safety aspects and all that is done correct. And he's really understanding that piece of communication where If something isn't quite right, he can communicate that well, but he also it's more than just an attaboy. He's very specific about what he's seeing and what's happening there. And, he comes back and he lets us know, like, this is where this person is at. What can we do to help him out with this particular
So I
skills?
presume this goes way, because my bias is from the homeowner and on a residential install. This goes way beyond what the homeowner sees when they walk into their basement and see a new installation. So you were talking about vehicle inspections. You're talking about, I guess, meeting all the requirements, all the permitting requirements, safety issues, cleanliness. But what all? I presume dispatch, like make
Yeah.
sure they're there when they said they're going to be there.
Yeah, and it's like the first calls go to our, the CSR staff there, and so proud of that team. They're just exceptional, and they probably embrace the whole measures piece ahead of everybody, and they truly have fun, and they're supportive of each other. And I know sometimes, a 5-star review will come in and they tend to focus on the technician. And every now and then, they'll mention the young ladies there, and they're just so proud to be a part of that. And their contribution is huge, right? But so that phone rings, and they're the face of the company then, really. And they get it rolling. And I do think too is that a piece of this that can be missed is the warehouse efficiency and how they kind of piece that together. And I'm not sure exactly like what our competitors or others out there are doing exactly, but what I do know is that sometimes, we'll interview somebody from another organization and they pick up very quickly on the organizational piece. We get feedback on that. And I think that they, people like starting their day the right way. And the equipment is organized well, it's laid out well, there's the checks and the double checks. When they go to the job site, they're ready to execute and go to work. And that means a lot because it's burning up their day, and they want to go and know that they have what they need to do a good job. And I think that is a part of the business that we can start to take for granted, even because it just kind of runs smoothly there, right? But it's so important.
I remember when there was this moment when I came to JPS and the warranty pile was like a desk long of parts and stuff, and was just like needed to go back, and it's just money sitting on the table. And I think it was, oh, maybe it was 7 or 8 months ago, somebody was like, yeah, the warranty, and we were all started to look at each other like, what warranty? And we just forget that it just seamlessly happens now, that is taken care of. And when you start this process, and like you said, we're very busy and there's a lot going on. How do you manage it all? At first, a manager can feel like he's drowning and you're throwing him a baby to do something else. But as soon as you start working on problems, as soon as you start engaging that, as these problems start to go away, they start smoothing out quickly, and you have capacity then to do proper leadership management and to, do, um, you know, inspect things and look after things and be proactive versus this reactionary method that was happening when I came to JPS. People were running around with chickens like their heads cut off, like drowning and trying to stay on top of things, and everybody was like, we're crazy busy, we're crazy busy. Well, we're doing like, I don't know if it's twice as much, and everybody's completely calm. Everybody's under complete control. Everybody's on top of everything. And that's all because of this energy that we put into to basically properly supervising and properly supporting the team and properly working on problems. Like if there's an issue, I loved, when Ramsey came in, he pointed out something. He goes, what's really important to us is that we actually learn from our issues and we do proper AARs, after action reviews, around everything that's going on so that we don't repeat this mistake twice. And that's how you end up building capacity in your company because of the efficiencies and everything that you're doing. But we're truly not the ones figuring it all out. They are.
Yeah.
they're the ones figuring it out. They're the ones that understand, well, this isn't working right, or this is a problem. And we've made an environment where it's okay to talk about problems and not feel like you're throwing somebody under the bus. I can't tell you how hard that was to kind of break that mindset that you're actually not a team player when you don't talk about problems. But they thought, I'm going to be a team player and not talk about anything I don't like or anything I don't see, because I don't want anyone to get in trouble,
Yeah.
and I don't want to rock the boat, and I don't want to do that. But then what is happening is we're not getting better. So as soon as the culture became so safe that we rewarded and thanked and appreciated everybody that would come up with things that could make us better, they started coming up with all this stuff that, well, we need to fix that, and we need to fix this, and this has got to be improved. And then all of a sudden it's smoothing itself out by everybody else.
But how do you do that? Aren't most of your craftsmen, most of your trades, aren't they on contract? Like, do they? Maybe this is a messed up question, but if they get paid for an install, they get compensated for an install. Why are they interested in spending time in the office, telling you, giving feedback to you about what you could or should or how to make it better?
Well, I could comment just briefly, but they care. Like they care that it's going better. So what is better for, what is good for them is good for us. What's good for me is good for them. Like we all start realizing that we all work together, and they care. So um it's like, it's hard to describe, but many times, like other companies, you come to work, you've got a job to do, you don't have this part, you got to run to the store to get that. This isn't set up properly, you don't have proper notes, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, you're trying to figure it out. It's frustrating, it's irritating, it's bothersome. You
Take
feel
more time.
yeah, it takes more time, you feel unappreciated.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, when they realize that we start fixing those kinds of things, the jobs are organized, it's totally set up.
So do you measure? I presume I know the answer to this, but let me ask the obvious question. Do you then measure the number of times that you have to send a part, or that a guy has to leave the site to get another part, or that,
Well, yeah, we
that
know.
you're not,
We know. Yeah.
you know every time? Like that's
Yeah.
an important metric for you.
Yeah, and I would say with that was that that was an area that had a pretty strong focus. And honestly, like I was just asking the question because I didn't know. I'm just assuming that we're having these troubles, right? And the truth was that it's like anything else, the attention goes there and it kind of evaporates. And I don't know, I'd be lying if I said I know if we're measuring it today. I don't really believe that it's important at this time. I think we've moved on to
Because
other
you're
things.
past that.
We're past it, yeah. And
But wouldn't that be like a core issue that you have in your business? Is that a craftsman shows up and doesn't have the tools or the parts necessary to complete a job?
I think that we've got to a place here now where I like to believe that if that happens, it's kind of like alarm bells are going. Like it where before maybe it was just muffled and part of the noise, right? But now it would be known. And I think that the responses, if it does happen, is pretty quick. And I want to add to that, Wouter, too, something that it was a conversation I had an hour before we began to drive over here. But one of the managers started to show me a lot of the data that they're collecting. And I like to think that I'm kind of on top of what's going on there, but I was more than shocked when I saw what was there. And what was interesting to me was that it was all interesting. It was really, really relevant. And something jumped out, and I was showing that this year, January was quite a bit warmer than last year, and we tend to like colder weather in the winter, right? And there was like a 70% improvement in this aspect of the business there, and I was like so happy to see that. I knew it was good, but I wasn't aware it was getting that good. And the comfort with like Derek had said about like, well, we're doing more, but it just feels easier, and that was expressed there. But what I also found interesting was that this particular manager said to me that part of what is happening there is that the staff in that particular department, the people reporting to her, are saying they understand how her performance is measured. They understand those measures. And that's really all it took for them to say, okay, I get it. I know how I can help. And they just do it.
So everything from my context is everything from my perspective is in the context of a project, right?
Mhm.
And so my questions might be inappropriate because this is your job. This is what you're doing every day and chasing it down. But from what you're saying is your managers, those that report to you, have understood the process of operational excellence and gamifying the workplace, that they're kind of getting ahead of you. They're creating their own metrics, they're providing the feedback, that it's now become a little bit of a runaway.
100% true. Yeah.
They're finding all the opportunities that are laying everywhere versus I think many times the managers feel like they're pulling their hair out because they can't seem to get people to care, and you'll get those stereotypes of kids these days, right? Like, and they'll
Next generation.
yeah, exactly. And I always thought it was very interesting in those conversations that we had where it's like if that was really absolutely true, we'd all still be living in caves, nobody would advance. But that's not the case. Everybody likes change that's beneficial to them. The problem is many times in companies, any changes that are done are only done one-sided. They're not involved and they're not connected, and it's done for a particular benefit that doesn't have the involvement of everybody. But once everybody's involved, and then once everybody's driving, like it's hard to keep up. Like it's the people are gamified, if you want to say,
Yeah.
where they've they know the levers and the buttons they can push. They know the excellence that we're looking for. They see the opportunities and they come forward with them on a regular basis. And what's great is they're happening interdepartmentally. People aren't just staying in their lanes. They have to learn they can only work within their lanes, but they can communicate outside their lanes so that they're supporting each other and it's working together. And that's where leadership is really important, because from what forefront will right in the model in the center is leadership, and that's the key for it all to happen. So once it gets there, you start training leaders and they become leaders themselves.
There, we're at a point here now where some of our um, managers, supervisors are teaching operational excellence. They're very proud to share and sit at the table and bring the leadership team around and tell their stories and help us all grow together and learn. And it's not, it doesn't have to be Derek or myself there now. Like we're past that for sure. And I think this week was a really exciting week, and I saw something that encourages me in a big way. And think back about where we were a while ago, and one of the challenges in business is it's easy to introduce a new concept, but it's very hard to get the right buy-in and the energy behind it. And that's been, I think, such a big shift for us, because where there might have been resistance to some change or some different thought processes, that's disappearing now. And we had there was some thoughts around some things that we can do differently that would really help our business, give us a good position us better in the marketplace and all. And we looked at these things and kind of start to share that. This is maybe going back a year and a half or a couple years ago, and it was easy to get some pushback. Well, that won't work here. Like, it's different what you're talking about. Like, there's no way. Well, we just had two.
Never heard that.
Yeah. That's something you've seen, right?
Yeah.
And so we kind of keep nudging this along, and two amazing employees just got back from a trip to the U.S. where they spent a couple of days with another HVAC company there. And, it was like, we understand that it is a bit of apples and oranges, but it's all about innovation and moving forward. And, I'm getting calls from them. We're back at the hotel. You're not going to believe what we're seeing, what we're learning, what we can bring back. And they've, put together a presentation. I can't wait to see it. That will be coming next week, and that's a significant difference, and it really changes our lives. And I'm just so excited to see these kind of things happening, right? Tells us we're going the right way.
Yeah, I always find that exciting when that. Um, I've had clients do that in the past. They get at a point and they want to learn from the best, And in fact, years and years ago, at one point, I had a client that they outreached to a competitor of theirs because they were competing on the marketing and sales sides, but they weren't competing on the production side. And so they decided to compare notes on the production side. And they were head and shoulders above the rest of the industry on the production side. Fierce competitors on the marketing side, but heads and tails over everyone else. And we sent people back and forth all the time on, in this case, how to make newsprint better. And and they were the best. You could figure out who they were. They were the two on the left side of the graph. They're the best producers. That's really exciting. So you must have dreams about or thoughts about the future. What are your next steps? Where are you going? Where are you going with it? Is there anything that you can or willing to share about your future?
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, the owner of JPS, which I said had established a pretty good culture right from the time I was there, but it just needed all this refinement and proper leadership behind it to just, it was like they just needed a match and they just needed to light that fire. He because he cares about his people, he's like, we need to keep giving them opportunity. Like people need opportunity, and the only way to get opportunity is to grow and get bigger. So we believe that the industry is available to be gamified in many ways. And it's not just for ourselves too. I think we owe it to the citizens of Calgary and the citizens that actually purchase our services to get the best services and performance that they can get, and it's incumbent upon us to provide that to them. So we kind of hold ourselves to a high standard of making sure in our business that we do that for consumers, but then also, like I was saying, about providing opportunity for the people that are doing those, and so expansion and opportunities to grow and to make this happen in the industry, and with the market share that we want to carry is kind of where we're just going to keep going as far as it can go.
No, no.
It's hard to say exactly what it would look like, but I think that the services that we provide from our one location, there's definitely there's more space. We can do more. And so I think we just kind of keep on that path. Just be sure that we're growing at the right speed, and the quality piece will never go away. The focus stays there, and I think too is really that staffing balance, right? And investing in the people, get the right people in the door, invest in them effectively, properly, and
Yeah.
we are doing a little bit more now than I think in the past with having people learn other roles. And I'm not exactly sure how that's all going to work, but I'm feeling really good about it. And a lot of it is just the communication and cooperation from each department. And there it at first it's a bit confusing, but I see that they're working it out, and it's coming together. So I think that it's another way of providing opportunity to our employees. They're gaining other skill sets, and I think that it helps with their choices on where they want to go too.
Have you started to see some of the benefits of this through reduced turnover or increased?
Yeah, that was a discussion yesterday, and our turnover rate is definitely low for the industry. Um, I don't know exactly what it should be, but I think it's in a pretty good place. Um, we're we're taking more time. I think that the interview process and all, and what's changed too is that a lot of it, Wouter, truly is the cultural fit. Um, that
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of people out there that technically fairly sound, I guess,
Yeah.
but it's so much more, and it's so important to us to have the people that feel like it's home. And it's changed too. Like I've interviewed people lately, and they're asking us the questions about, like, you know what happens during the holiday season,
Right.
and what do you guys do for fun, and
Yeah.
things that didn't matter before, they do matter now. And we're working hard. And I think that we have I think about some of the people in the the business part downstairs there, Derek, and how dedicated they are to being sure that the environment is right and the culture is. I like to believe that we're all a part of that, but I'd be lying if I said there's definitely a couple there that are just
Yeah.
they're driven to be sure, to be certain that it's working well, and we're so fortunate to have that as a part of the business.
I often tell prospective clients uh, when the sales process is that often when you get going with these kinds of initiatives, those that don't buy in self-eliminate, even if you're in a union shop, because there's a state of mind that comes along with this process. And while I believe it's 80 or 90% of the people of the population out there that want to do it and they want to participate, they want to have fun, they want to think, they want to use their minds. There's a portion of the population that just can't get their head around it, but they see the direction it goes and they self-eliminate, and so you don't really even have to worry about it. And if you can weed that out in your interview process, then the adoption rate is just that much faster when new people come on board anyway. And there's no big transition. This is just the way their world is at JPS. So let's go. And then if they can reap the benefits of it, be it culturally, financially, being challenged, in pride of work, in satisfaction, job well done, then that just all combines to make a great workplace.
Yeah, I think it's just like keep providing opportunity. It's careful not to overpromise, and people have to understand that we're a very patient business, really. Like it's nobody's pushed extremely hard on timelines or anything like that. We like to do it a little bit differently, so people have to feel like comfortable with that too, because some people are used to maybe a different pace and all, but we like to be sure that it's done right and that the planning is right and the execution is right. And if it means, a trip back the next day or whatever it is, that's what we're going to do, just to be sure. And I think people settle into that at first, maybe a little bit skeptical. I think about our, some of the maintenance employees where perhaps they were in roles before where it was like, finish that job, get to the next one. And we just say it's okay to just take your time, be sure you're delivering the best service possible. And, if the next customer has to wait, it's not on you. We'll handle it from our end and
Yeah.
look after them, right?
I got to say this podcast, particularly this was a little self-serving because I'm I take ownership and I take pride in the work we do and what we do. And I often get asked is, how sustainable is this? And when I heard what you were doing at JPS and Steve joined you and you were kind of executing it and you were at my house last summer and you were talking about some of the stuff, I got to tell you, I probably took as much ownership of it as you did, Steve. I really did because I love the model. I love executing on the model, and there's nothing that makes me happier than to see JPS and you individually, and more importantly, everyone that's affiliated with you benefiting from what I think should be common knowledge in all industries and how you lead and act and bring people along in the workplace.
And I want to say
So
too,
it's
Wouter, it's we were
it's
talking about how many years have gone by. I was in my 15, and Derek with the 12 years, I guess, right? But this is a long time. But I don't know how many times, Derek, you and I have sat and talked about the foundation, the things that we were a part of, that we learned, that participated in, and I look back at like a lot of the projects and what I learned from people on site,
yeah.
and and um and it's made our lives better. It's more enjoyable. I hope it's having the impact that at least I like to believe on a lot of our people at JPS. And there's no doubt about it that it's life changing, and it was a good experience and it mattered, right? So
Yeah.
always appreciate that.
Well, that's great. Is there anything you guys want to kind of add? Like I've been asking questions here that you want to chat about or mention before we wrap up today.
Well, as we were talking here, I was thinking about, how once this gets rolling, sometimes this is steamrolling so fast you have to put the brakes on it. Some people get so highly invested in it that they have like what they can get angry if they're so highly invested that they see something that they get aggressive about it, right? And so it takes strong leadership to be able to kind of work the model properly and balance it so that it's productive, because you could veer off of one side or go off another side, and good leadership keeps it in its balance so that it continually goes forward. And so I remember there was a time when Bill Brown came to me on one of the projects that we were working on. He spent 2 days with me, but when he first came there, he was asking me how I was doing, and I was like, "Oh, I'm killing it. Like, I'm just killing it, right? I got metrics and I got this." But he was kind of like, okay, okay." But I was picking up a small sense that I wasn't killing it. And so I had to ask him. I was like, "How do you think I'm doing?" And I remembered, like, "Am I losing my job here or what's happening?" And I just was like, "How am I doing?" And he's like, "You're not getting it." And I was like, "How's that possible? Look what I'm doing." And he started to walk me through how it's a lot more than just the nuanced, like putting a number down and then just tracking or that. It's this whole cultural leadership that moves around the model that allows this to like make this work in synergy and harmony around the communication of all the aspects that are going on. So does it work? Unequivocally, exponentially, powerful beyond what I think people can truly understand until you can do it and unlock it. But I hear it a lot even when I go into those places, because it seems to be going around in the industry a bit now about what it is. And people are getting the concepts, but they are actually not understanding the execution. And that there's a big difference there. It takes a lot of development and skill around what's going on when you're looking at the behaviors of your team and the attitudes and the mindsets and the performance and all of that that's going on. These all intertwine to each other, and it takes adept leadership to keep it in balance and to keep it on track and to keep it moving. And so sometimes I feel like it's diminished in terms of, oh, it's just, behavioral science, or it's just a metric, or they're all important, but it's all put into the context and the way that it's properly led and done. Otherwise, it can become punishing, which is the total opposite of what we're actually wanting it to become. It's to become rewarding, it's to become positive, it's to become engaging, it's to become motivating, it's to drive all of this going forward. But it can be the exact opposite if it's not being done right. Yeah. And that takes some development. So when Bill said to me, "You're not quite getting it," he was right. And it took me a little while to sort that out. But once I did get it, then everything shifted in my relationships and the performance and how it was being received. Everything was going on. So it's just important to understand that it takes some time, but it's really connected into the nuanced leadership that at Forefront we would always work towards to make sure that it was beneficial.
I could always see it in the coaches that we hired when the switch flipped, and often it would switch very quickly. I'd be running around, and then this flip would
Yeah.
switch, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, now we're good. Now we're good forever. Now it's just managing details after that. I always think of projects as it's like my wife described soap operas 20 or 30 years ago. And she goes, if you watch it every day, nothing changes. But if you miss a week, everyone's married to everyone else. Like
Yeah.
everything is fundamentally different. And which I always thought was a funny description. But I find projects and work like this is on a day-to-day basis, you're kind of plugging along and you're trying to move it forward by these tiny little increments.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize how much has changed until you force yourself to look back. You think, wow, this has fundamentally changed. And so, your physical example of, the table that's full of papers that just doesn't exist anymore.
Mhm.
Or I'll never forget at Hayworth, all their rework. They had this massive, I want to call it an arena, but this massive area of all this rework, which just disappeared and was reassigned to someone else. There's just no work in the rework because we didn't create it anymore. It was all gone. It was physically gone from the site, but everyone forgets that.
I remember when nobody was even tracking how much recall work we were doing or going back and stuff. And when Ramsey first came and Steve first came, it was like, could we even monetize that or put a number to it? Like we couldn't even imagine because we didn't even have, we knew we were doing it a lot. It was like an alarm. We knew it was happening a lot. We knew it was affecting us. But then we decided to measure it and track it. And that number was coming in at about 23%. And no one even knew the number before. So then all of a sudden you bring the number to the owner and his alarm bells are going through the roof. And it's like, what do we do about this? And
because that's 100% cost, no revenue.
yeah. And so you want to start jerking on the levers and the handles and implementing process, and you want to start doing things to affect it. But when we started to engage people and do the process of understanding it, AARs, learning, education, like getting like operational problems where like it's so complex. No one person's just going to solve that on their own with just coming up with a bright idea. It's nuanced and there's a lot of factors, but you start smoothing them out. And then last year, I think our recall rate was 6. So it's like, yeah. So, and we feel like there's still more to go.
What will it be next year?
We will be below 3.
Will you really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But that's.
So you have action plans, engagement, involvement. Everyone knows that number. We know where it's at.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we come together, more than like, I guess monthly in a very formal way to look at that and support. And these are not. These are good meetings. Like nobody's getting beat up or punished or anything with those numbers. It's just like, what are the solutions here? And we get together in smaller groups, of course, like, in a more weekly type of format. And, we're looking at what are we doing in the very short term? Let's, move this out to a month, quarter. So I think that the controls are getting better and better. And we're learning that, before, like maybe the chaos was, there was just so many opportunities there. And now I think we've gotten pretty good at seeing like what's next and getting a good focus on it.
Yeah.
And getting there. And, there's, I think too, is, I think kind of the last thing, and it's for me anyway, is I think about where we are. And I think the best part of the work for myself now is, we're seeing that this leadership team just take off and do amazing things. But I'm seeing it also in the newest employees. And that really excites me right now. I come in on Monday morning and a new maintenance technician. This is a young man who's worked, but he's now on a career path. And it's exciting to him. And it kind of like makes my day. What a great way to start is he's showing me his Milwaukee tool bag that he spent a lot of his money on, and the tools that are in it, and he's sorting through. And me and my dad went shopping, and that I just love that part of it too, right? Because I think here's a young man that's got a good future with us, and I feel that's my responsibility and others' responsibility to be sure that we make his path the best it can be,
right?
And that's a big piece of it right now. And I see some of these young people that have joined us, and I'm thinking, this is kind of a good way to wind down my career, to see them launch and do great things and not feel like they're in a bad environment or a punitive one, but an exciting path. And I don't know where they'll be 5 years from now, but I see good things happening.
It's funny, you get all these different little indicators that show success. The new Milwaukee bag, the flipping the clock back and tell stories about it. I was in an AAR the other day, and it was a job that went colossally bad. Now, you guys know that when you first do an after action or an AAR, you do the first ones, people can be pretty defensive and pretty twitchy. Well,
I don't want to be here.
Yeah, they don't know.
It's not my fault.
Yeah. But in this particular AAR, it was it went so colossally bad that the job went so colossally bad that people were laughing. And then the turbo blew out of the truck and everyone started laughing.
Yeah.
It was just a kaleidoscope of errors
Mm-hmm.
and of failures on our part. But they were already at the point that, okay, we could laugh and joke about this and we're not going to let it happen again, as opposed to just writing it off as, what a terrible day that was, and let's move on. And so I had complete solace in the fact that they were laughing and joking about it. And then when the action items came out of it, I mean, there was just 100 great actions that'll prevent it from happening again.
A lot of times in that situation, you start realizing that somebody that was in a certain situation didn't know what to do. And they didn't have a very clear direction as to what decision they should be making at this time. So they made the best decision they thought they could make, and it compounded to that decision to this. And so you end up going by, it's like, well, actually, no one really knew what to do in this situation. So even clarifying that and giving a clear pathway, right, or SOP or whatever you need to do, like all of a sudden in that situation, you're preventing that just because there's education, there's communication, there's all that around it. Nobody was trying to make a mistake or make a big mess of it, but because of a lack of information or knowledge or understanding, it became a calamity of errors. And just that communication, they feel engaged, they feel involved, they feel better because it's like, okay, I know what to do next time that this happens. We won't do that. We stop, we go here, we make this, and then that's how you prevent that. But it's so incredible how you just realize that someone didn't even actually know what they should be doing.
Yeah. Well, the biggest outcome, like there was literally 100 action items that came out of this job that I was talking about.
That's a lot.
But probably the biggest single action item was that just proper prep work wasn't done.
Okay.
That we had to put a whole procedure in, is that we went into the job unprepared,
Right.
and it caught us. And so really at the end of the day, what we had to do was, we created a whole prep process. So long before that anyone got in a truck, same stuff that you were talking about, tools, equipment, planning, site location, all that kind of homework would have been done. And so it's the same. It's the same thing.
Before, probably everybody thought this was good enough until you have this.
We know what to do. We're all professionals.
Yeah.
We know how to do the job. What could possibly go wrong?
Until everyone has to own it,
Yeah.
that we all are in this. And then what happens is the next time when you need to do your job prep, there's so much less pushback on it
Oh yeah.
because they understand the value of getting it done and not having to go through that again.
I remember one of the sites that you and I worked on. I think it was Petrol Bank or Petrol Bakken or one of those, and they were talking about preparing for freeze up. And it's like, well, we do it every year. It's no big deal. Yeah, but every year, look at your production graph.
Yeah.
And so, so the game became, how much could we smooth that out?
Yeah.
And the same thing, it was all the rolling eyes, and really, we all know how to do this.
Yeah.
Well, by the time we had it all out on the board, everyone walked away with a bunch of action items, and sure enough, then we got them all done. And, for the first time in years, there was no big dip in production for a freeze up. It was all stuff that people knew. Like there was nothing new that came on the board except for thinking about it, reflecting on it, creating the action items, and actually doing it.
Yes. Yeah.
But why not? Anyway, I really want to congratulate you on JPS and the way it's going down the path. And like I said earlier, it makes me makes me really proud as well. And so, when I hear the stories from Steve and a couple from you going down the line, I understand you just got an award as well. You got recognized for the work that you're doing. It's really satisfying. I got to tell you, it's really, really satisfying. So thanks for coming in. Thanks for being part of the
Appreciate
podcast.
having us, Wouter.
Thanks.
And thanks for all you've
Pretty
done.
cool.
Yeah, no, we do.
Thank you for watching the Run It Like You Own It podcast with Wouter Dai. Visit forefrontperformance.com or find us on social media at forefront.performance.